Hey everyone, Mick Manhattan here, and welcome back to Classic Film Review on the Snobs channel. I want to give a big thank you to our Patreon member Bronson Wright-Wolfe for supplying this film for review today. Today we're revisiting Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed, Raja Gosnell's 2004 sequel that brought the whole Mystery Inc. gang back, doubled the monster count, and committed fully to giving fans the original Hanna-Barbera cartoon and the most spectacular live-action rogues gallery ever assembled. If the first film asked what Mystery Inc. would look like in the real world, the sequel asks something even more exciting. What would their greatest monsters look like? And what would happen if someone figured out how to bring them all back at once? The film opens at Coolsville Museum of Mystery, a museum dedicated to all the villains Mystery Inc. have unmasked over the years. It is a brilliant premise for a sequel, mining the mythology of the original cartoon's entire history of solved cases. During the opening gala, a masked villain steals the costumes for two of the gang's most notorious adversaries, the Black Knight Ghost and the 10,000-volt Ghost, and uses a mysterious machine to bring the actual monsters to life. No more rubber suits. No more humans in disguise, real monsters terrorizing a real city. With Coolsville turning against Mystery Inc., blamed for unleashing the very monsters they are trying to stop, the gang must clear their name, identify the masked villain, and shut down the monster machine before the whole situation spirals beyond control. The film adds a genuine emotional texture through Shaggy and Scooby's arc. Under public pressure and media scrutiny, the two best friends begin to doubt themselves, questioning whether they have ever really been useful to the team, or whether they've just been along for the ride. It's a surprisingly sincere thread running through the comedy, and it gives the film's resolution real emotional weight. Velma also gets a romantic subplot with the museum employee Patrick, played by Seth Green, a character whose true allegiances form part of a central mystery, and Daphne and Fred each get moments to demonstrate the competence and heart beyond their usual archetypes. The sequel is in some respects a more generous film to the ensemble than the original. The production of Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed was in every measurable sense a larger undertaking than the original. Where the first film required a creation of a single photorealistic CGI character, Scooby-Doo himself, the sequel required an entirely new population of monsters, each drawn from the original Hanna-Barbera cartoons catalog of classic villains. The Black Ghost, the 10,000-volt Ghost, the Cotton Candy Glob, the Pterodactyl Ghost, the Tar Monster. Each one had to be designed, built, and animated from scratch at a level of visual fidelity that could hold up in broad daylight alongside live performers. The visual effects team at the studio pushed their own benchmarks significantly from the first film. The monster sequences, particularly the full-scale attack scenes across Coolsville, represent one of the most ambitious CGI creature work in any family film of that era. The creatures feel genuinely physical. They have weight and texture and presence. That does not happen accidentally. The returning core cast, Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, Matthew Lillard, and Linda Cardellini, brought the same commitment and warmth that they had from the original work, but with the ease of a company of actors who now genuinely knew each other. The chemistry across the ensemble in the sequel is noticeably looser and more confident. These are performers comfortable with their characters, and it shows in every scene. Seth Green was cast as Patrick, the museum employee and Velma's love interest, and brought his characteristic deadpan wit to a role that carries a more narrative weight than it initially appears. Peter Boyle plays Old Man Wickles, a suspect with a magnificent name and a satisfyingly suspicious demeanor, and Alicia Silverstone joins the cast as Heather Jasper Howe, a television journalist determined to destroy Mystery Inc.'s reputation, delivering a performance of enjoyably committed antagonism. Director Raja Gosnell has spoken about the creative philosophy driving the sequel. His deliberate decision to lean further into the classic monster mythology of the original cartoon, rather than creating entirely new villains. For a generation of fans who had grown up watching the animated series and seeing the Black Knight rendered in full CGI live action was a genuinely thrilling proposition. I truly mean that as a fan of this series. It was very cool to see these monsters. The production design across Coolsville is also worth noting. The film builds a more fully realized world than the island setting of the original. The streets, the museums, the laboratories, underground lairs, and the production team created a Coolsville that feels more like a cartoon rendered in brick and mortar, without ever losing slightly heightened primary color warmth. It was generally like watching these behind the scenes like cartoon drawings come to life in a new way, and it was such a beautiful thing as a fan of the show. When Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed opened in March 2004, it performed solidly at the box office, earning over $181 million worldwide, a step down from the original's $275 million global run, but entirely respectable for a family sequel opening outside of a peak summer window. Critical reception followed a familiar pattern. Most reviewers found the film formulaic and thin in its script department, the same criticisms leveled at the original. while acknowledging that it delivered precisely what its target audience had come to see. Several critics noted that it improved CGI work and the stronger monster sequences as technical achievements. Matthew Lillard once again was singled out across the board. At this point, reviewers who might dismiss everything about the Scooby-Doo films would still pause to note that Lillard's Shaggy was something worth watching. That consistency of individual praise across the two films in two different critical cycles tells you everything about the quality of the performance. Family audiences and younger viewers responded with the same warmth and enthusiasm they had brought for its original. Children, families, and nostalgic adults, they all fell in love with this sequel. Monsters Unleashed was everything the sequel needed to be. 20 years later, Scooby-Doo Monsters Unleashed occupies a warm and specific place in the memory of an entire generation. For children who grew up watching these films, the monster sequences remain vivid. The Black Knight ghost crashing through Coolsville, the 10,000-volt ghost crackling and sparking, the sheer scale of the creature attacks. These are images that have lodged themselves into the imagination and stayed there. The CGI work viewed through the lens of what was possible in 2004 holds up considerably better than the film's critical reception suggested it would. The Shaggy and Scooby self-doubt arc, which could easily have been throwaway subplot, has been reassessed with genuine appreciation over the years. It hits home, and it is effective. We care about these characters, and we don't want them to doubt themselves. Even if one of them is a cartoon dog, that's effective writing. The decision to base the villain scheme around the original character's classic monster back catalog was, in retrospect, the sequel's smartest creative choice. It rewarded the most dedicated fans of the source material while keeping the action accessible to the audiences coming in fresh. And it gave the CGI team a brief that pushed them to the best work. Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed is not a film that will ever trouble the upper reaches of critical canon. It is not made for that. It was made to delight, to thrill, and to remind a generation of why they fell in love with Great Dane and his friends in the first place. On that measure, it succeeds completely. For me, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed is the rare sequel that understands its own job description with complete clarity. It's not trying to deconstruct the franchise, it's not trying to subvert expectations or reimagine mythology. It knows that the audience coming back for the second film wants more monsters, more Shaggy and Scooby, more of the gang being brave, funny, and human, and it gives them all of that with generosity and craft. These two Scooby-Doo films taken together are a more coherent and more affectionate piece of franchise filmmaking than they were usually given credit for. They love their characters, they love their audience, and they love the cartoon that made it all possible. Thank you again to our Patreon supporter Bronson for supplying us with this movie for a review. If you guys want to supply us with movies for review as well, become a paid Patreon supporter. You can head over there, there's other perks as well, and we do have a free tier as well if you just want to follow and support. Thank you guys again for watching Classic Film Review on the Seeing Snobs channel. If Monsters Unleashed brought back some brilliant memories today, hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. It makes a real difference and helps us bring more films like this one to more people who love them. Thank you again, and make sure to follow us at the Seeing Snobs all over social media and over on Letterboxd and Substack, where we do written reviews as well. I'm Mick Manhattan from the Seeing Snobs, and until next time, make sure you take care of yourselves. That's important. Be kind, rewind, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.